So this lesson is a Macbeth lesson, but it's aimed at A level and above. So if you're taking GCSE, I recommend just kind of redoing or going over the GCSE classes that I've made so far and all the character stuff and context and themes and so on. This one's not going to be as helpful for you, maybe. If you're aiming for really top level at GCSE or you're considering taking literature for A level, which hopefully you are because it's awesome, you are welcome to watch this class. If you're kind of just interested in like how do I get better at essays generally, definitely watch this class. If you're doing university level or anything like that, or you're just interested in essays or Macbeth in general, you're welcome to take this class. So yeah, you might find it a little bit hard if you're at GCSE, and I would recommend, even if you are interested in A level, getting really confident with how to do an essay at GCSE level before you move on to this one. So now we've got that all out of the way. If you're still with me, thank you. And yeah, we're going to have a look at this higher level essay. So there's a few different essays on here actually, and I'm going to just look at the question, the intro, a middle paragraph, and possibly the conclusion of some of them. So I will upload the full document to the Scribbly website and make sure that you download and have a look through the whole thing because it will be useful for you. It would just take me about like 2 hours to do all of them. So I figured I'd do a slightly sped up version for the sake of your sanity so that you don't have to sit here for 2 hours and look at essays. So so the first thing we're going to look at is types of questions. So this one is a discursive essay because it's asking us to discuss a theme or idea. So when you have a question that is asking you about a specific topic, we call that discursive. So it might be about a character, it might be about a theme or an idea in the play. So in what ways does Shakespeare vividly present human flaws and weaknesses in Macbeth? And the main difference between a GCSE and A-level essay, if you're kind of worried about that step up or you're not sure what the step up is, basically, is the depth of analysis. So you need to go deeper into your points and you need to know more. And that knowledge has to come across in your paragraphs, which we'll have a look at in a second. It's about human flaws and weaknesses. You have to stay 100% focused on that topic. If you start to kind of go a bit off topic, you're just not going to be picking up any marks. So you're writing loads of stuff without getting anywhere. So this is just a principle for any essay ever in any subject that you do. Always stay 100% on topic. It's not about showing everything you know about the text. It's about making sure you're really focused on that question and creating a really cohesive sort of answer that sticks together and properly presents an argument on that question. So we'll have a look at the intro first. Not the best intro ever, but it's a totally acceptable intro for this level. So I'm going to just read it out to you. Shakespeare observes and comments on human weaknesses and flaws through his characters in Macbeth. For example, Macbeth's ambition is eventually his downfall. Lady Macbeth's manipulative tendencies eventually lead her to kill herself, and King Duncan was too trusting, which led to his murder. In each of the deaths in Macbeth, flaws and weaknesses are what sets in motion events which result in disaster. You're welcome to pause at this point and kind of try and deconstruct this intro a bit more, think a bit longer about it, think about what it's doing well and so on. I'm going to just jump in and tell you my opinions on it, but feel free to kind of take the class at a slower pace and spend longer with each section. So my kind of immediate observations of it, it's got some good vocabulary. So we've got, I'll just colour some of it in. So manipulative tendencies, it's aware of themes, ambition. It's very focused on the question from the beginning, and it has a clear thesis. For some reason, when I do essays, I always put my thesis in purple. You might have noticed from my other classes that I do this. So yeah, it's just so that you can see the argument and then you can see the line of argument in the later paragraphs. So the argument is the thing that you put at the end of your intro that makes sure that you're answering the question as fully as possible, basically. So it's like if you were going to answer in one sentence as fully as possible, what would that sentence be? That's your thesis. So you can take my essay writing courses and academic writing courses if you're not sure about a thesis or what that is, or you need a bit more help with that as well. And I do recommend doing those for A-level students or above. So we're really focused on the question. We're starting to pick apart some little details of the play. So, like 3 different characters here, 3 different moments where they're flawed or they're weak in some way, and that leads to kind of disaster or negative events. So, it's nicely structured in terms of it's picking apart the question, it's thinking about it in terms of different characters, it has a clear thesis, and it's very focused on Shakespeare. So, it's not focused on Macbeth is like this or Lady Macbeth is like that. It's centered around the writer and what does he want and how did he structure the text to get the most out of it in terms of messages, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that well. Like, what does he mean by it? What does he want us to take home and learn from the play? So he's commenting on weakness and flaws. He's trying to say that flaws and weakness create disaster, and you can see that reflected in the thesis there. So you kind of want to ask yourself, like, what is the writer trying to say? What point are they making about humanity or society or the nature of existence? They have these themes and they make statements about these themes. They have messages on each theme. So for every A-level essay, definitely, even for like kind of a really high level at GCSE, you want to be sensitive to those themes and those messages underneath the text. So you're not just analysing on the level of the story, you're analysing on the level of the meaning behind the story. So you have to kind of develop a sensitivity to that over time. And with every text that you study, I really recommend spending quite a long time going into the themes and the messages and understanding what is the ultimate thing that we're going to learn from this experience of literature. Because the difference between literature or just a normal story is that literature has this message or some kind of message. So yeah, I've kind of rambled a bit there. Hopefully that's clear what you need to do for an intro. Feel free to write down anything I say or anything useful from these essays as well. So you should always be just kind of generally note taking and jotting things down because that helps you learn and it helps you revise as well. It's kind of the aim with the Scribbly courses. So yeah, we've got a nice intro and most importantly, a nice thesis that is focused on the writer, not the characters. So we're going to go into paragraph 1 now. And what I want to see in here before I even read it is I want to see that it's justifying this thesis. So the thesis is that flaws create disaster. Human weakness creates disaster. So hopefully this first paragraph is going to confirm that thesis and it's going to back it up because that's what you need to do for your high levels at A-level. So desire and temptation are what starts the series of murders. Temptation can be a dangerous thing when used as a primary motive. Macbeth shows this common human weakness. Stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. Macbeth asks the witches for more details on their prophecy and is not ashamed to hide lustful enthusiasm. Shakespeare wrote his plays when religion was the primary source of wisdom and people believed in heaven and hell. As an audience back then, it must have been shocking to see Macbeth commit several deadly sins. He commits murder, thus condemning himself to hell. While this may not have much of an impact in today's audience, in the 1600s they believed in the heavy consequences Macbeth would have to face, thus making his choices even harder to comprehend and justify. So again, if you want to go at a slow pace, feel free to pause and think about this paragraph and think about what is it doing well, what could it do better. And if you're not sure or you kind of press for time, we'll carry on. So I'm going to give you my opinion on it. Yeah, I'm just thinking for a second. It's difficult, isn't it? It's good in some ways. It's very good at context. So this bit, this whole section here, this is all context. Normally I put context in blue in my essays. So yeah, so it's kind of focused a lot in quite a high level way on the difference between beliefs at the time and beliefs now, and how that leads to a difference in interpretation at the time versus an interpretation now. And this is one of the things you want to be doing to get really high A level literature grades. So that's really, really cool, I think. I like that about it. It's got a nice little quote. The quote is maybe not the best for the point it's making. So it's making a point about desire and temptation. Um, it does show temptation, like he wants more knowledge. And sorry, don't know what's happened to my voice today. It's just going. I get these days where I've talked too much and my voice is just like broken. So it's one of those. What was I saying? Yeah. So it's all right, that quote. It probably needs to go into more language analysis, I'd say. Like, it's really light on the language analysis. So jot that down, that you always go into detailed kind of analysis of your quote before you move on. So it's good at the wider context and the wider kind of reading of when you understand the play in the time period and you understand what the audience is like and how they're going to respond. That's great. What's lacking is the language and the detailed analysis. So I would want to see more zooming in on the word imperfect. So maybe the fact that even though he knows they're not good or they're not perfect beings, because God is considered to be a perfect being in this day. Yeah, he still wants them. He's still kind of compelled to know more about them, and he wants to know more about his own prophecy. So that would make this paragraph a lot more successful if you zoomed in on a couple of words, or tell me more. The imperative, tell me. He's commanding these witches, which is probably a bad idea because they're obviously evil and crazy and quite powerful. But he's sort of not really thinking clearly, or he's not very intelligent this way, which is like a big thing with Macbeth. He's got certain types of greatness, but not others. Like, he's not the most intelligent, I wouldn't say, of Shakespeare's characters. So he's commanding these witches. So zooming in on those would make this a much stronger paragraph. And the most important fundamental thing that you always want in every single A level paragraph is it needs to tie back to this at the end. So we've got this purple thesis here. It needs a final sentence to that paragraph that ties it back to this thesis. That doesn't mean just repeating it. It means picking up on the ideas of your thesis and then kind of reinforcing those in your middle paragraph. So the message is that flaws and weakness create disaster. So we need to be going back to that. So desire and temptation are dangerous. They show weakness. That's all vaguely talking about the question, and it's relating to the thesis in a kind of indirect way. But we need it to really, like, spell it out for the examiner. How does this relate to your argument? Argument and thesis are the same thing. So sometimes you'll hear me say thesis, sometimes argument. So yeah, how does it relate to it? So you want to just be saying, well, these weaknesses are connected to the idea of sin in Macbeth's culture, and it's a common Christian message that sin results in disaster. If you start sinning, you create evil in the world and you also damn yourself to hell. So Shakespeare is reinforcing this message that we shouldn't give in to temptation and we shouldn't give in to our weaknesses, and we should stay in control of our emotions rather than allowing them to sort of take over our minds, which is what Macbeth does. Something like that would be good as a final thought on this paragraph. So so hopefully you can see that. We're going to have a look at the next one now. I'm going to just read it out. The biggest flaw which both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth share is ambition. While normal ambition is not a weakness or flaw, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's ambition was out of control. They were both consumed with the promise of power. Macbeth even admits to this before killing Duncan. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. In this quote, Macbeth admits there is no justification for killing Duncan, only his selfish desires, which he sees have gone beyond anything normal. Ower leaps into something dark and unknown. As an audience, we see how Macbeth struggles with reasoning and his longing for the throne. That is spelt wrong, in case you're like, hang on, is that how you spell throne? That's not how you spell throne. I've not changed anything about this essay, so we'll we'll go into that in a sec. Often a discussed theme in the Bible, Macbeth struggles between right and wrong. Macbeth momentarily chooses right and decides not to kill Duncan. The audience now believes there is still good in Macbeth and that he was the victim of extreme manipulation. This idea proves to be true when Lady Macbeth taunts him back into killing Duncan. So again, if you have the time, pause and come up with your own comments about what's good and bad. So with these types of essay-based lessons, you want to be critical. And that doesn't mean you're mean. That means you're fair and you're balanced. So you'll notice that I'm always hypercritical in a very balanced way because I just want people to write the best they can possibly write. So I'll tell them everything that's amazing and great about their work so that they keep doing it, and everything that is not so great and could be changed so that they can change it. So it's not emotional or personal in any way. And I'm dyslexic, so I spell words wrong all the time. So I'm not having a go at writing throne that way. I was just pointing out that you're going to spell it like this. That is also the word thrown, but it's like to throw something, whereas thrown like this, as in Game of Thrones. So so be critical. Think about positives and negatives. Do this a lot with other people's work, and you'll notice that you develop a sense of like a critical eye, it's called, like an ability to see the positives and negatives in writing. And then you can start applying that to your own work, and then you will massively, massively improve because you'll just be a lot more confident on things that work and things that don't work in terms of essays. So it's really important to develop that sense of yourself in essay writing in any subject at A level, university level, and beyond. So stuff that I really like about it. I really like the zooming in here. So I was saying that's missing in the last paragraph. We zoom in here, it's much better. O'erleaps. And it's actually a really nice interpretation of that word, the fact that overleaps suggests he's gone too far, like he feels like he's crossed a boundary and it's jumped over a kind of gap between good and evil and he can't go back, that type of thing. So it's a really nice interpretation of that word. Could go further into that still. It's kind of missing techniques. So I would call it a contraction because it should be overleaps, but he's changed it to overleaps, and that's actually to keep the meter right, so to keep the iambic pentameter of the line correct. Make sure you're happy with iambic pentameter and how Shakespeare uses it, because it's it's like a really complex thing to be able to talk about, so it's quite impressive if you can do that in an essay. And so he's contracted that word overleaps, and it feels like a leap in itself because it's sort of jumping, it's kind of skipping out a couple of letters. So it shows that he's too hasty, and it suggests that his weakness is hastiness. So maybe not ambition in itself, like it's fine to try and improve yourself, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what's bad is if you are too impatient about it and you try and do it too quickly and you try and cut corners and you end up doing evil stuff so that you end up in a better position, that's actually what's bad. You have to kind of remember Shakespeare was obviously an ambitious guy. He ended up going from living in some tiny little village in the middle of nowhere to like writing for the king and the queen and stuff. That's a massive kind of career jump. He was supposed to just be like, a kind of trader in his town. What was it? His father was like a leather maker, I think. Can't quite remember. But his father was just a merchant in their small town in the countryside. And Shakespeare moved to London by himself and, ended up in acting and then ended up writing and then ended up writing for the king and writing for the queen. It's massive. So he's an ambitious guy. So he maybe isn't going to be like, all ambition is wrong, because that's a bit hypocritical. Instead, he might be like, well, ambition's wrong if you're so ambitious that you will do evil. in order to further your position, which seems like a more moderate and a more, like, to me, that feels like a good kind of message to be sending to people. So yeah, so be quite sensitive to your arguments as well, which this actually is. So it's like normal ambition is not a weakness, but this type of ambition is too obsessive, it's too extreme, and that is a weakness. And both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth share this. It's a little bit descriptive at times. This is really important not to describe. So it's good when it's talking about the audience believing that there's good in Macbeth, because then we've got this idea that Macbeth's not like a one-sided evil villain. He's got this kind of tension in him, which is important for a tragic hero as well, that they have this tension. And yeah, and it's kind of a bit quick on Lady Macbeth. It's just sort of commenting on her. So it should really deal with that in a bit more detail there, I would say. If your topic sentence, the first sentence in your paragraph, is about two characters equally, your paragraph then should be equal about those two characters. So yeah, so a pretty good paragraph. Again, that's not perfect by any means, but there's some good bits, some not so good bits. Hopefully you got some similar comments to me. There is more I could say about it, but I just want to give you like a flavour. So there's always more you can do. I'm hypercritical of my own writing, and I just, when I write something, I hate it, and I just want it all to go away. So yeah, so I'm even critical of my own writing at a level where I can obviously write pretty well, and I'm quite into literature and so on. So you never get perfect, basically, but you can always improve. So I've given enough comment, I think, for you guys to be able to know how to improve that paragraph, which is the aim. So hopefully that's been useful for you with this essay. There is obviously a bit more. There's a couple more paragraphs here that I'm scrolling through. So feel free to kind of look at those in the document and finish this essay off and absorb more ideas from it. For the sake of being quick with my timing, I'm going to actually move on to another example essay. So this one, it wasn't graded. I can't remember which of my students even did it because it's from a while ago. I would say it's around a B grade. Some things are lacking. So like from what I've read anyway, I want to see more language form structure. Even to get a really solid B grade, it would need more language form structure. Some things are really brilliant. So like the context in that first paragraph is kind of like an A grade level. So be aware in your own writing that not everything is going to be at the same level, and make sure that you're always working on the things that are weaker in your own personal writing. So I have some students who are like amazing at context and themes and character and stuff, and then they try and do language and they just don't know what to say. So if that's you, practice your language analysis skills. Vice versa. Like I'm the opposite really. When I was at school and uni, I was really confident, like zooming in, and I knew all my techniques and had loads of ideas and stuff. And I was really bad at like combining that with the bigger picture. So I had to work on the opposite skill basically. So yeah, just be aware of whatever you personally are good and not so good at, and work on the not so good stuff, and make sure you keep up with the good stuff. So we're going to have a look at a different type of essay now. This is a borderline A-star grade. So this is actually marked. I think I found this on a website. I'm really sorry, I don't know where from. So if this is yours, then thank you for letting me use this, and message me and I'll credit you, because I really hate not crediting people. But I've been teaching Macbeth like 8 years, and I just kind of got resources over those 8 years from all random places, and a lot of that is before I actually wanted to use it for Scribbly. So yeah, some things I don't have credited, but I'm always happy to credit, and I never intend to steal anything. So the reason I'm using it anyway is because it's got a clear grading to it. So it was given 4 marks off full marks. It was given a top band. It's a borderline A-star. It was written in time conditions. It was for the AQA board. So this gives you a lot of specific information about this essay. And you can kind of like read it with confidence, knowing that it's a high level. and we should see that it's higher than the one before. So the one before, if you're feeling like that's already a good level for you, and you're like, I would even, kill, not kill because that's ambitious and we don't kill, obviously, because Shakespeare teaches us not to, but, I would die to, maybe not die either. I would just love to be at a B grade. If you're that kind of person, stay with that B grade essay that we looked at, analyze it, get yourself up to that level before you move on. So you're not going to just suddenly jump from a D to an A. But I've had students that go from a D to an A within a year and within 6 months, actually. And the way that I do that is I get them up the levels, so one level at a time. So make sure that you're doing that. So if you're at a D grade, aim for a C. When you can get a C, aim for a B. When you're at a B, aim for an A. That kind of thing. And if you just do that and you're really consistent, you can really surprise yourself and massively improve. But there's no point doing some of the little really good stuff that an A star grade would do if your foundation isn't in place for a C grade. Because even if you've got some A star level ideas, you're still going to end up at a C because your structure's not right, or you've not got a thesis, or that kind of thing. So work one level at a time and really push yourself, because honestly, I have had people go from like a D grade to the top of a class before, in Macbeth even, and surprise everyone, their teachers themselves and everything. So it can be done.